It is an honor to introduce the 2010 Star Woman of the Year, Julie Ancis. Each year, the Section for the Advancement of Women recognizes the influential role of a psychologist in the advancement of women in counseling psychology. In 2010, SAR granted this prestigious award to Julie Ancis, full professor in the Department of Counseling and Psychological Services at Georgia State University. Julie has conducted over 100 professional presentations and published many journal articles, book chapters, and books on feminism and multiculturalism. Her contributions to social justice, feminist counseling psychology, and the advancement of women are numerous. They include participating on the American Psychological Association's task force for the development of guidelines for psychological practice with girls and women, chairing the American Counseling Association's Counselors for Social Justice Committee on DSM-5 proposals, being legal and legislative representative for the Georgia Psychological Association's Council on Women and Girls, and serving as chair of the Senate Cultural Diversity Committee at Georgia State University. In the past several years, her research is focused on women's experience in family court. It is an immense pleasure to be here to listen to her story and the lessons she has learned during her professional and personal journey. Please join me in congratulating Julie Ancis for her many accomplishments.
Thanks so much. It is really an honor to receive this award, as SAW is very special to me on a personal and a professional level. I'd like to thank the nominating committee and Dawn Szymanski. Did she leave the room? No, she's there behind me. Dawn Szymanski in particular for the nomination. I told you how to be here. Dawn was a doctoral student of mine who has continued to be incredibly productive in advancing the field. Together we published a TCP article that is one of my most favorite personal contributions on counseling trainees' white privilege, an area that I had been thinking about for some time and arose from my teaching in multicultural counseling. I've been a member of SAW since the early to mid-90s as a doctoral student and subsequently as an early career professional. The founders and leaders of the section, Roberta Nutt, Carol Enns, Ruth Bassinger, Linda Forrest, are role models to me. What an opportunity I have now to express my appreciation and vocalize how they and SAW have impacted me. It's also an opportunity to discuss the influence of personal experiences, both positive and those less than pleasant, on my feminist consciousness in an attempt to bear witness and destigmatize certain encounters, an opportunity that few receive, and if they do, one that comes late in life. One of the highlights of my early professional career was participating in a conference sponsored by SAW entitled the Integration of Feminism and Multiculturalism Conference. The year was 1998 and the location was Ypsilanti, Michigan. It was a 3-day conference devoted to integrating and centralizing feminism and multiculturalism in counseling psychology. I was a new faculty member at the time. At the conference there were 10 working groups broken down by theme or topical area, and each group was charged with brainstorming ways in which we could advance this integration within our respective topical areas. The conference resulted in a book on feminist and multicultural pedagogy, journal articles, presentations, and other contributions. I was a member of the pedagogy working group. Carol Enns and Ada Sinnecord-Wynn were co-chairs of the group. This was a pivotal moment in terms of my feminist consciousness. Carol and Ada as co-chairs were something to witness. I was struck by the amount and the quality of the work that was accomplished in just 3 days. Moreover, I was struck by how much fine work was accomplished with a style of leadership that I had read about, yet never really fully experienced, or never really experienced, period. An atmosphere was created that encouraged contributions by all present, both professors and graduate students, professionals at different levels of their career, where everybody was meant to feel that her viewpoint was important, a context of equal participation, where a serious attempt was made to foster diverse perspectives and address issues of race, gender, class, and difference. At the same time, we were held to very high standards. This was a model of leadership that resonated with my my core, an aspect of my core that I had repressed, that I had not yet developed, as this was not the normative style of leadership one experiences in institutions. The leadership of Carol and Ada on the pedagogy working group showed me that another style was achievable and quite possibly better than the one to which I was accustomed. I've since had the privilege to work with Carol in different capacities, mostly writing projects. She always impresses me with her insight, her ability to pull disparate ideas together very quickly, her efficiency, her grace, her level-headedness, her brilliance, respect, genuineness, and warmth. Thank you, Carol, for being a shining light at all these APA conferences and beyond. I remember the end of the conference in Michigan, the last day, where all conference participants came together to process and discuss the outcome and future directions of the working groups. The co-chairs of the conference were Linda Forrest and Frida Rosenberg, another powerful duo, with additional leadership from folks like Ruth Bassinger. We were in a large auditorium with about 175 people in attendance. The co-chairs of each of the 10 working groups stood up to report on their progress. Conference participants also spoke. I remember being amazed by these women, and then being struck that I was so astonished by what I was witnessing. I was overwhelmed with the process, a feminist one, where everyone's contributions were welcomed, collective decision-making was employed, and goals were accomplished, an integration of both mind and soul. What was most unexpected was how struck I was by the perceptiveness and insight of these women. Why, I asked myself, at this point in my life, was I so surprised by the intelligence and empowerment of these women? Why, in this room full of accomplishment, did I not just take that for granted? What a moment when I realized the extent of my internalized sexism, the prevalence of sexist imagery and messages, how thick these internalized isms are, how embedded they become in one's psyche, regardless of one's own accomplishments, role models, and exposure. And these were messages that related to my own group, women. If I had to work this hard to dispel internalized stereotypes about my own group, how much harder would I have to work to dispel stereotypes about those who were different from me? Or maybe that would be easier in some respects. Maybe not. So many questions. Another important professional moment involved working on the APA guidelines for psychological practice with girls and women. Carol Enns, Roberta Nutt, and Joy Rice served as the co-chairs. These three powerhouses led the development of the guidelines, an effort that took years of persistence and hard work on their part and resulted in an important contribution to our field. A good part of that work occurred at another conference in Dallas, Texas in 2002. At that point, we were working on organizing the structure and the content of the guidelines. I served as diversity chair and was charged with overseeing the diversity section of the guidelines. One vivid memory of that weekend, besides having some incredibly rich conversations and learning to make jewelry, was witnessing the power and brilliance of Ruth Bassinger, who stood up to declare that the guidelines should be feminist with a capital F. Yes, Ruth. Another significant professional moment, getting back to that article on white privilege, Linda Forrest emailed me with such nice, encouraging, unsolicited emails before this talk, and can't be here. She's at a board meeting. She was the action editor at the time of that article, and the piece was very controversial. Dawn and I encountered some very unusual obstacles in writing it up. I never encountered any editor as committed as Linda. She thought the piece was an important one and put an incredible amount of time and effort into making sure that it was published. But perhaps more importantly, and without getting into details of the situation, Linda was a model of ethics and commitment to social justice. A combination, again, of heart, soul, and mind. I remain extremely grateful to her for her commitment in seeing the article through. It was published in TCP in 2001 as a major contribution. There are many other women in SAW that I admire and appreciate. This is an organization that advances girls' and women's rights within the field of counseling psychology and has an influence on other fields. Since I've been a member of SAW, work has been conducted on the guidelines, on trauma, on debunking false memory syndrome, mentoring, all critical initiatives. So for me, this award is an honor like no other. The experiences I've described thus far are relatively isolated ones. They don't represent the activities of my day-to-day life. They're not necessarily experiences that were long-standing, yet they have had a profound impact on my professional development. On a more personal level, there are many experiences that have contributed to a greater consciousness around issues of gender, race, class, sexual orientation, ability, religion. I've written about these experiences from a personal perspective elsewhere, and other publications are in press. I thank Beverly Green, whose work I have admired for years, for allowing me to write about my multiple and intersecting identities in her and Broadber's text, Minion of Women, Family Dynamics, Jewish Identity, and Psychotherapy Practice, which was published as a special issue in Women in Therapy in 2010. These identities include being a New York City born and raised Jewish woman whose ancestors fled religious persecution and murder, who has lived in the South, Virginia, and now Atlanta for about 18 years, could you believe it, and teaches multicultural issues in the South. My particular identities and experiences have provided me with certain sensibilities, an understanding of the potentially negative or dangerous implications of disclosing an identity that may otherwise be invisible, sensitivity to cultural differences in nonverbal and verbal behavior, including an understanding of being misunderstood or having one's cultural expressions misinterpreted, an understanding of the pain associated with others not acknowledging the historical persecution of a group to which one belongs, and how related messages, including stereotypes and present-day experiences, impact one's identity and life. The ability to see parallels between different forms of oppression, at the same time understand the need to be very cautious about making parallels between various oppressions. And a deep appreciation and a passion for diversity in all of its forms. These sensibilities have enriched my teaching and research in multicultural counseling.